Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of UnderRadar. Today I have a very special treat for you as I present two games, Gungrave and Gungrave Overdose. Gungrave is a third-person shooter developed by Red Entertainment and published by Sega in 2002 for the PlayStation 2. The sequel, Gungrave Overdose, was developed by an animation studio, Ikusabune, and published by Mastiff 2 years later in 2004. These games are real diamonds in the rough, where they were awesome games with cool art styles, fun gameplay, and nice jazzy western style, similar to Trigun and Cowboy Bebop, but it wasn't appreciated as much as they really deserved. The city is overrun by corruption like crime and a drug on the streets known as seed. In this city of sin, Beyond the Grave takes his dual pistols known as Cerberus and his mysterious coffin that carries a nice set of weaponry within and sets out on a bloody rampage to seek revenge against his killer, Harry McDowell, who happened to also be his best friend and partner back in the day. Spoiler alert, Grave gets his revenge, and after 2 years, the plot of Gungrave Overdose begins. In Overdose, Grave is reawakened by an older Mika Asagi to help in destroying a drug empire run by the Corcione family. Strapped with a new coffin with a plethora of new weapons and ammunition within, Grave sets out on his new journey with some new protagonists to jump into the mix. The graphic style of Gungrave and Overdose sports a cel shade style that's really unique to me, showing a more dark and gritty form of most cel shade I've seen from games like Wind Waker and such. The first game suffered from bulky models and really dark visuals, but it was still visible and enjoyable when it comes to cutscenes. Overdose addresses the issues of the first game, with leaner models and brighter visuals, which really contribute to the overall enjoyment of the cutscenes and gameplay. I also enjoy the artistic stylings of Yasuhiro Naitao, who not only did the character designs for both Gungrave and Overdose, but also worked on Trigun, which helps support the theory that Gungrave was the result of a cancelled Trigun game, Trigun: The Planet Gunsmoke. Maybe it's some rose-tinted goggles I'm wearing or something, but I prefer the first Gungrave's graphical style than Overdose, even if it was a bit too dark to see at times. The music in these games is really catchy, and I find myself enjoying it a lot thanks to Tsuneo Imahori. I get the Trigun and Cowboy Bebop vibe from it, with the western themes, and it also carries its own unique touch, with tracks going from intense rock to some calmy, jazzy feels. These are one of those games where the soundtrack alone makes it worth the price. The voice acting in these games isn't perfect, but it's not that bad. Voice actors have been cast for the right roles in these games, even having the legendary Steve Bloom in the cast.
If there is a god, he must have a nasty sense of humor. Why else give a man who's lived so long yet another chance to make a fool of himself?
Despite this, there are a few pieces of dialogue that sound very bland when you expect a character to sound like they're flipping out.
Billy, it's a trap!
In Gungrave, you play as Beyond the Grave. Both Overdose, you have a choice of 3 characters who are classified as dead men. We have the legendary Grave, formerly known as Brandon Heat before the betrayal at the hands of Harry McDowell. Juji Kabane, the irritated blind swordsman who sports dual semi-auto gunblades and uses pyromancy. Rocket Billy Red Cadillac, the ghost ladies man that haunts an electric guitar coupled with a mysterious past. Gungrave's gameplay is the soul of this entire game, and it's all about the action. And poor Grave gets no breaks from his enemies as he's thrown wave after wave of bad dudes on his quest for vengeance in stages with sections like a beat 'em up. You'll be graded on your performance, and your score eventually adds up at the end of the whole game. The combat in the game has Grave sporting his dual pistols known as Cerberus, and his coffin that's full of ammunition and missiles that bring down the hammer on all of his foes. In the game options, you have the option to fire weapons automatically or manually for that immersive feeling of firing each bullet from the chamber, with Overdose allowing you to charge your shot. Overdose does a few tweaks and upgrades to make the game more satisfying, like having Grave's Coffin reflect missiles, giving you melee combos, and new demolition shots. But in the end, it's all about the fun gameplay Gungrave offers in the previous game. Along with your basic gun shooting and diving around like John Woo, Grave's Coffin comes into play as a melee weapon and in a fun, unique way, known as the demolition shot. Throughout the game, you'll rack up combo score known as beats. As your beat meter fills up, you get points you can spend on demolition shot or to refill your health in a pinch. The demolition shot is like a limit break fatality, and it obliterates whatever's in front of you. The best part about the demolition shot is around halfway through the game, certain bosses with a smidgen of their life left will change into a demolition shot that's called a graveyard special, in which Grave dazzles you with cinematic finish to give the boss battle its well-deserved conclusion. In Overdose, the demolition shot is different, but a bit more balanced. In the original, you could store a lot of demolition shots, which could also be used for fully healing yourself. But in Overdose, you're limited to 4 of them, and you can't use them for healing, which I feel is an improvement to help increase the difficulty. The trade-off of this is that there are no graveyard specials you can do, but there are a few cutscenes that can replicate it. One big downside about Gungrave is its short lifespan, lasting about 1 hour, which is extremely underwhelming when you're in on the action and getting into the story. Overdose improves on the lifespan, but not by much, considering the main story with Grave runs around 2 to 3 hours. Add the other 2 characters in and you end up with 6 to 8 hours, or maybe even less, considering the other 2 characters run through the same stages as Grave does, which lessens the replayability in my opinion. But it's still fun to play as new characters with different feels to them. Despite the short time, it's still a nice story with a colorful cast of characters, and I love playing with both games. Gungrave is a series I've loved for some time, the video games and the anime included, and to think it's possible because of the great anime like Trigun makes me love it even more. I'd love to see a remake of the series with better graphics, quicker action combat, and more impressive music, and an updated cast of voice actors. Honestly guys, from the heart, thank you so much for watching this episode of UnderRadar, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. Except real talk, they gotta bring Steve Bloom back at least. He's the legend. Come on, you can't do anything without Steve Bloom. What hasn't Steve Bloom been in these days?